As sports history fans, we often reminisce about the legends. Willis Reed limping onto the NBA Finals court, Curt Schilling's bloody sock, Kerry Strug's courageous dismount, and so many more. These moments often define sports history. But what about the countless injuries that did not become legends, or careers that were derailed due to inadequate care? That's where this episode's sponsor comes in. Introducing to you, ILP Sports Consultants, your trusted sports injury partner, available 24/7. Brian Maelli at ILP Sports Consultants has over 20 years of experience in the orthopedic and sports medicine industry, and he has worked with athletes across the gamut, from youth to amateurs, professionals, in almost every sport played in the United States of America, accommodating athletes at every stage of their career. This adaptability ensures that ILP services are perfectly tailored to your skill level, no matter where you are in your athletic journey. With ILP, you are in control. Choose the steps that matter most to you. Diagnosis, treatment plan, recovery, or the whole journey. ILP services are tailored to your unique needs. Rushing for care is a common pitfall, leading to future problems. ILP Sports Consultants helps you make the right decisions, ensuring that you receive timely and safe care. And here's a bonus. Brian hosts the Injured List podcast, sharing insights and athlete stories you won't want to miss. Whether you're a concerned parent or grandparent, or an athlete yourself seeking guidance, ILP Sports Consultants is your beacon of hope in sports injury management. Visit ilpsports.com today. That's the letters ilpsports.com. ILP Sports Consultants, where your well-being is the priority and your recovery is the mission. Choose ILP Sports Consultants for a healthier sports journey, helping you get back in the game the smart way.
The contents of this podcast does not represent the opinions of others and is solely the opinions of HARV ARONSON based on his experience, knowledge, and research. Welcome to the Total Sports Recall, your source for sports news and topics from a different angle. And now here's your host, HARV ARONSON.
Welcome to the Total Sports Recall podcast. This is your host, HARV ARONSON, and my guest for this episode is a gentleman who assisted in a big way in helping this podcast get off the ground. An associate of mine who also has his own podcast, of which I've been a guest on several times. He also hails from Western Pennsylvania like me, and the introduction to my show and the disclaimer that you heard were done by my guest. Our guest is Darin Hayes, who is a lifelong resident of Erie, Pennsylvania, where he grew up watching and playing sports. And while attending Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania, Hayes became a high school football official and worked games wearing stripes for 27 seasons. This endeavor led him to write for some respected football officiating websites specializing in the history of gridiron rules, and eventually starting his website and podcast, Pigskin Dispatch, in 2020. Another website of North American sports history, JerseyDispatch.com, came a year later, along with YesteryearHub.com. Then he created and co-founded the audio drama Orville Mulligan Sports Writer with Os Davis. Besides the sites and the podcast, Darin has his first book on the history of gridiron coming out in late 2023. Darin, welcome to the show, and this is a change of pace, you being on my show instead of me being on yours.
Yeah, Harv, this is weird being on the other side of the microphone here, so thank you for the invite. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. It's good to have you on, and we'll get the ball rolling by letting you tell our listeners a little more about your website and the subsequent podcast, Pigskin Dispatch.
Well, Pigskin Dispatch is, our motto is, it's the portal to positive football history. And, people always say, what's positive football history? Well, we don't really want to sit there and talk about, the negatives of football. I like to reflect back when I was a kid, and I think, Harv, you and most of the listeners can relate here. When you were young and your dads would bring home something from, the beer distributor, or, maybe you got a Nerf football or electric football or football cards. It was fun. I mean, there's nothing like, it's almost like Christmas morning when you get a pack of football cards when you're a kid and you open it up and you don't know what's going to be in there. You know the stale piece of gum's going to be in there, but you don't know what you're going to get in those things. And you go through it and you trade them with your buddies and everything. That's the fun of football that as an adult I try to recapture and emulate and share with the listeners and the readers of Pigskin Dispatch. So that's sort of what we're trying to do, and honoring the legends of the game and the great games and teams and coaches and people associated with the game of football.
Yeah, and one of my guests recently, Charles Slavic, he's about our age as well, and we reflect all the time. And he's been on twice, and we've both talked about how growing up in the 70s, 80s was just the best decades ever to grow up in. And you mentioned some of the collectibles. For some reason, it popped in my head, but the old Sunoco football stickers. Do you remember those?
I don't know if we had those up here.
Yeah,
my parents got gas at Arco, so we got the little Noah's Ark animals. We didn't get the stickers.
For a while, you could buy this book, and every time you go to get gas at Sunoco, they would give you a player's sticker, and it goes in the book under whatever team they play for on their page, and you stick it in there, and it gives you their position, their school, and it was pretty cool. So yeah, when you talk about things like the trading cards and stuff like that, yeah, we had a lot of fun stuff back then, absolutely. So, as you mentioned and as I mentioned in your bio, tell us about JerseyDispatch.com.
Well, Jersey Dispatch sort of came about a year after the origination of Pigskin Dispatch. We ran a special on Pigskin Dispatch where we took all 100 jersey numbers of the NFL and pro football, I should say, not just the NFL. And I had guests on for, from the time we started the day after the Super Bowl and ended it like the second week of the next season in 2020. And we brought in, guests, and we talked about who was the greatest players that wore number 5. And we'd sit there and we'd talk about them and just have a great conversation about them with a guest. And we went through every single jersey number. It was the most popular, and it still is the most popular pages on the site. The podcast we did subsequent to it, those were great numbers on that. People loved it. So, and people would write into me and call me and say, hey, can you do this for baseball? Can you do this for hockey? So jersey, it's not New Jersey that it's about. It's about the jerseys, the uniforms that the players wear. And we try to capture the legends in the game and talk about them for the 4 major sports of North America, including the NFL and football on that site too. Talk about jersey numbers and sort of dedicated to that. It's centered around the jersey numbers.
And to think that back in history, there was a time where they didn't have any jersey numbers. The players just came out with just plain old uniforms.
That's true.
So, yeah, numbers have made the game very cool. And speaking of numbers, actually, it made me think of another thought that Charles and I were talking about, debating with number 21 and whether or not that number should be retired throughout all of baseball the same way Jackie Robinson did. And he said there is a push that they're trying to get Roberto's number retired across baseball, but there's some pushback on that. And basically Charles was reading that some of that pushback is because they don't want Jackie Robinson to be overshadowed by his being the only number that's retired, which I find kind of silly. I mean, there's no reason why you should only have one number retired, especially when you have somebody like Roberto Clemente. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, I sort of go the other way. I mean, I think that the numbers should be honored and, held in high esteem, hung up in the stadiums, put on placards, statues, everything like that, and be honored. But eventually, I mean, think about 100 years from now. What are we going to do as we have all these great athletes and teams are retiring the numbers? I mean, what are the New York Yankees going to wear? Are they going to wear, I don't know, they have to wear like shapes or something to do it, because they have so many numbers that are retired. I almost like sort of what the Steelers do. You honor that number for a long time, and maybe if it's a really special player, which I think they only have 2 numbers retired now after retiring Franco's last year, is that's I think the way to do it. But you don't see a number 12 out there. You don't see a number 58 on the Steelers for the last 40 years. But they're not retired. They're honored.
Yeah.
And I think someday we may see some of those out. Maybe after you and I are gone and people don't remember those players anymore. But I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, and it is a good point, because if you think about it, with all the fantastic baseball players that have been over the years, how do you really debate on whose number should not ever be worn again? I mean, Clemente was a great player, but you could go on forever naming great players as well that, might have that same argument. But it'll be interesting to see how that leads out. I know there's people still pushing for it. I'm not aware of the audio drama Orville Mulligan, so that came as a little bit surprised when I found out about that. Give us the goods on that one.
Well, Oz Davis, who is on Sports History Network as well, like you and I are, he has a few different podcasts out there. He's got a very creative guy, has some very interesting things. He lives out in California, has lived all over the world. Well, him and I were talking one day after doing a podcast, and I said, you know what? I said, I have this idea. I said, I want to get sports history in another manner. We can talk about it on podcasts. We can write about it in blogs. We can, talk about nauseum. But having a different avenue, a medium avenue to talk about great sports history, I said, I've got this, like to create this character. So we created this character, Orville Mulligan, and he is a sports writer in Pittsburgh in the 1920s. And we picked the 1924 season, the fall of 1924, because of all the specialness to it. The World Series went to a Game 7. You had the Four Horsemen in Notre Dame. You had Ernie Nevers playing for Stanford. You just had all these great things. You had gangsters. You had prohibition. All kinds of different things going on outside the sports world, and a lot of gambling and nefarious type of activities. Mm-hmm. So we took our fictitious character and put him in these actual sporting events. That's what each episode is about. And sort of, we play through. There was some fictitious characters meeting, talking to Babe Ruth, talking to Red Grange. Wow. We take him up to Chicago, and because he's a newspaper reporter, so he's on assignment, and he's covering the Illinois game with Red Grange playing the University of Chicago, Amos Alonzo Stagg on Saturday, and on Sunday we have, and these are actual dates. We pick dates of actual games. The Chicago Cardinals are playing. I think I forget who they're playing that day, but we have that game covered too, and we take play-by-plays from the game and sections of it. And because before radio was popular, but radio is just coming up. But we fictitiously put in a play-by-play so people are learning about that game and those players and learning something about sports history. Just another way to learn about it. It's kind of interesting.
That is cool. And those were done on a podcast?
They're done as an audio drama. We have hired actors, professional actors, which are phenomenal.
Wow.
And we have a website, orvilleMulligan.com, where all our podcasts are. They're also on Sports History Network and on every podcast provider, Orville Mulligan.
I'm going to have to go listen to that. That sounds really, really cool. So, I graduated from a sister state school as you did. Slippery Rock was my alma mater. Slippery Rock University in Pennsylvania now. It was known as State College when I graduated in 1982. And you graduated from Edinburgh, a constant opponent of the Rock in football and other sports. I still follow Slippery Rock football very closely. In fact, they're number 6 in the nation as of this broadcast and undefeated. Do you have any ongoing connections with Edinburgh in any fashion?
Well, I just went to their game this past Saturday. My youngest daughter is attending another university in Erie. Edinburgh is about 15 miles south of Erie, and I grew up in Edinburgh. That's my parents still live there. And my daughter's attending Gannon, and Edinburgh was at Gannon because Gannon joined the PSAC too, so which Slippery Rock and Edinburgh both in. And so we got to go there and watched Edinburgh go down to Gannon, which my daughter made sure she let me know about that and her friends that we were sitting there with. So Edinburgh's not a very good program anymore. Oh, Gannon beat them pretty bad. Yeah,
did they?
Got them. Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Last weekend, Slippery Rock was playing Mercyhurst College, and
another Erie school.
Oh my God! They put a 75 spot on them. I was like, it was 75-20. I was like, what? Oh my gosh! But the problem with Slippery Rock is they get to the postseason every year. They might get 2 rounds in, and then they end up losing. Ferris State usually is the one that beats them. There's a couple of other small schools. I'm hoping this will be the year, but we'll see. So while we're on topic of football, you spent 27 years refereeing high school football. That's a long time, and that's pretty impressive. Why did you not try to progress to a higher level, like college refereeing, Darin?
Well, I had the opportunities to, but Erie, we don't have a big Division I or Division. We have Division II schools. We just talked about Mercyhurst, Gannon, Edinburgh. We have a a Penn State affiliate, Darin, which is Division III. They don't have football, but they play basketball and other sports. To have a chapter, you have to have a little bit more bigger schools. So we would have had to join a Pittsburgh area chapter, and it's the same time as high school football season. Then there's guys that did it, but you're going down to Pittsburgh once a week from August through December, basically. You're traveling to games. They want you there like 24 hours on some games before game time, and the Pittsburgh chapter at the time when I could have done it, you're a lot of stuff out on the East Coast. You're driving 10, 12 hours sometimes, and it's just a lot of traveling. And I had my children were all small, so I stayed in the high school circuit and did the Saturday games, JV games and varsity games, and did quite a few games every year, like 40 to 50 ball games every single season I worked.
Yeah. Oh, we all know how referees can be the brunt of, you've made a bad call, and they get stuff thrown at them, yelled at. Do you ever experience anything like that?
Oh yeah, that's part of the nature of it. But it's actually kind of enjoyable as long as you are doing your job and you're doing the best you can. I mean, the first game that anybody goes out and works a perfect game as an official, it'll be a miracle because there's nobody who does it. We're all human. We all make mistakes. Right. But the same thing, the coaches know that. And a lot of times you'll see, some of the coaches end up being some close friends of mine. I still visit with them, talk with them. And, but you look out on the football field and you think, you're mortal enemies. But it's all part of it. And like I always told younger officials when I would be mentoring them, hey, high school football officials, a lot of them are at the schools not because they're a great history teacher or they teach English. It's because they're a great football coach. And if they're not winning games, that's their livelihood. They're losing their job. This is a part-time gig for guys in stripes at high school level. And so they got a lot more on the line than them. So they do need to get upset. That's part of their job. They got to argue the calls and try to work the system best they can.
When was the last year you reffed?
2016 was the last. I worked the Eastern Final.
Oh, very cool. So, and I don't think high school had the advantage of instant replays, right? They don't do that in high school.
No. Well, I did go to a game last weekend, 2 weekends ago, and I saw that they are allowed to have TV sets down on so the players can look at on the sideline.
Oh, wow.
They would have coaches go under. They had a little tent, and they're going underneath there and watching video during the game, which that was taboo. You're never allowed to have electronic devices on the sideline except a headset. When I officiated, so it's changed.
Something like Bill Belichick, right?
Yeah, right.
In New York Jets.
Right.
Well, like myself, you're a member of the Sports History Network. How long have you been a member, and what do you see as the benefits of this network in case there are any podcasters out there that might be interested in joining?
Well, when I joined the Sports History Network, it was probably about 2 months old. It was in the summer of 2020, and there was maybe 3 or 4 podcasts on it. There was Arnie and Joe Ziemba, Joe Zagorski, I think were the only ones on there at the time.
Wow.
And I wasn't a podcaster. I had a website, Pigskin Dispatch. Yeah. And I saw this Sports History Network, and I called Arnie Chapman, who was the founder and still the head honcho at the Sports History Network. I called him up and started talking. We had a conversation one afternoon, and he ended up talking to me. He goes, why don't you do a podcast? If you have this website, why don't you do a podcast? I'm like, I really don't. I don't know how to do podcasts. Yeah. And then he's like, yeah, you got to do it. And I said, well, if I did podcasts, I'd have to do one every single day. And he was doing all the editing out of everybody. Yeah. He's like, well, I can't handle it doing it every day. I said, well, I can figure out how to edit myself. He's like, he goes, are you crazy that you want to do a podcast every single day about football? I said, that's the only way I would do it. Well, I probably maybe regretted doing that, but we had 3 straight years of doing a brand new podcast every single day on Pigskin Dispatch. So,
wow.
And sometimes we did 2 or 3 when we were doing bonus editions
crazy.
and everything. So we had a lot of podcasts.
That's insanity.
Sports History Network, though, has been a great experience. Got some of my great friends, Arnie, Joe Ziemba, Oz Davis, these guys are great. Jeremy McFarland, and there's countless others guys around there. We just talk, we network together, and now you coming in, and some of the other guys, John Davis's of the world. I still I just had a conversation with John the other day, and he's not even actively doing podcasts now, but we're just all friends, and we love there's a lot of guys doing football and stuff. We get on there and just shoot the baloney a little bit. Off the air, and just because we're friends, we have a common interest in Sports History Network as that common bond.
Yeah, and Arnie's going to be coming on in a few weeks here, so he'll be a guest as well on the show, and I owe him a lot of gratitude because he's like yourself. You helped me a lot. He's helped me tremendously. All the equipment I have, I owe to Arnie for leading the way on what to buy and everything, and it's worked out really well. I think this is one of the best things I've done because coming out of Slippery Rock, I wanted to be a sports broadcaster, and that didn't work out. I didn't pursue it the way I should have, and it just became a distant dream. And so here I am 40 years later, and I got my own podcast. It's like the dream finally came true, but it's a lot of fun. And Sports History Network, I owe them a lot of gratitude for getting me here, and yourself as well. So I thank you guys for that.
Yeah, it's growing, and we've actually got some of our other friends. Bob Swick just brought his podcast over. Yeah. Ken Crippen, Football Learning Academy, just started up recently. George Bozica, the head man of the PFRA, has the PFRA official podcast. So a lot of these, bigger establishments are coming in and coming on Sports History Network as well. So it's really a nice rounded family coming up.
Yeah, well, our listeners definitely need to check out the network, and if there's any podcasters out there, think about joining. I think Arnie told me the other day there was 37, I think he had now, 37 podcasts. So he's gone from 2 that you guys originally started with, he's up to 37. That's a pretty good growth. It
certainly is.
In less than 3 years. Well, as far as your stuff goes, do you have any long-term goals for Pigskin Dispatch and Jersey Dispatch?
Well, but we're in sort of phase 2. I had a sort of a 5-year plan of things I wanted to accomplish. Basically, with Pigskin Dispatch, I didn't realize Jersey Dispatch and Orville Mulligan were going to come along the ride. Yeah. But one thing is we wanted to make sure we have something new coming up on our website, our front page every single day, and we did that. That's what those podcasts were doing and everything. Right now, I think today we had 8 different articles pop up for that, most of them pertaining to the day of the year. Football history every single day of the year. And, we do that because people say, well, how can you do that? Football is only played 3 or 4 months of the year. How can you do that? Well, we go into the Hall of Famers and talk about their birthdays and their careers through that and celebrate something every single day in football history. Maybe we're talking about a college team and their program and the history. Maybe it's a coach or, having a guest on that has a great subject or a book that's out. And so we do a lot of that too. So we celebrate every single day for football.
Well, people in the media will tell you, and they've said it over and over again, that football is 365 because when the football season ends, you're in February already, and the combines are coming up in like March and April. Then you got the draft. Then you got training camp, OTAs, and before you know it, you're back in the season again. So it's a year-round thing for sure. And as we're sitting here doing a podcast, and you're a veteran of conducting and producing podcasts, I would like you to give some advice to anybody out there that might be listening that wants to start one for themselves.
Well, podcasting can be, and I'm sure Harv, just from probably Arnie's advice, you can actually start a podcast with very little money up front. I think I started with like a $20 microphone I bought on Amazon and just my computer I had at home, and I still use free software for my editing. I use Audacity, which is free to download, and it works fine. I've done, like I said, 1,600 different podcasts on it, and some audio dramas and everything on it. Zoom. You can use a free version of Zoom or, Riverside like you're using, and there's, other ones you can Skype. There's a lot of different platforms you can record on, or just do it on the telephone. People have done that too. I've recorded them off the telephone before too. So there's a lot of things you can do that you have already in your house, and maybe you can buy for less than $30, $40 and have some good equipment. And as you get more experience and you know what you want, buy some better equipment, buy some mic stands and the everything like that, and some maybe a bigger monitor or whatever, and just learn how to do it. And it's a great thing. And you join something like Sports History Network, you have 37 people that'll help you and make it, bring all their advice and everything. And you got somebody you can always, a brother or sister in the podcasting world, you can call up and say, hey, I got this problem. How do you do it? And somebody's right there to help you out. So that's a great thing about being Sports History Network.
Absolutely. For those who love to talk sports, it's a great thing. If you're a passionate sports fan like ourselves, this is a great venue for doing that. And it's just a lot of fun. But the one thing that we've got to talk about, because we're both huge Pittsburgh sports fans, is the current state of the Steelers. So we'll get a little bit Steeler talk here, because Matt Canada is the hot topic, obviously. The chance of fire Matt Canada ringing out through the stadium, and the offense is really so pathetic right now.
Not just the stadium, it was at the Pens game the other night, too.
Yeah. Oh, you serious?
Yeah.
No way. Oh, my gosh. So, there's signs. I listen to, and you talk about doing daily podcasts, Locked on Steelers. I don't know if you've heard that yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I listen to that quite a bit.
I listen to every day on the way to work. I never miss it.
Yeah, I always listen to Chris.
Yeah, Chris is cool. They're repeatedly talking about Kenny Pickett and whether he's the real deal. Is this a thing of Matt Canada not knowing what he's doing, not calling right plays? Is it Kenny Pickett's talent? I think the kid's talented. I've been saying over and over again that I don't think it's entirely Matt Canada's fault, because you do have to execute. But I think when the season ends, he's going to be gone. You can do more with this offense than what's going on right now. Your thoughts on that?
I'm sort of mixed about it. It sounds like you are too. First of all, let's talk about it. When you have linemen that aren't meeting their responsibilities, and I think it's this group, it's the same thing that happened last year. They're trying to do zone blocking at the beginning of the year. They're not getting out there to their guys that they got to reach. The zones aren't getting blocked. When they played Baltimore in the last game, you had two of the best inside linebackers in the game are running free without getting a hat on them, and they're trying to run Najee Harris up the first and second down. Let's run them up the A gap and B gap, and Roquan Smith and Queenie are sitting there licking their chops and just pelting poor Najee as he's trying to go through the hole, and so the imagination of the offense is not there. I blame that on Canada. I think games like when they played the Raiders, they got away from the zone blocking and they started running double teams, and they're pulling guards and things like that, like we're used to watching the Steelers do, And they had some better success at running the ball. But they went back playing Baltimore, trying to do that zone blocking again until the late in the third quarter, I think fourth quarter, they started doing a couple double teams and stuff I saw. But the other thing is the Ravens are the first team this year that wanted to go man on man on every single play, and single coverage on Pickens. Pickett had a target and Pickett's had a great day, and I think that's part of the reason, because everybody has a lot of tape on Kenny Pickett from last year, and they know he's not real good against the zone. He sort of freezes up, and they do some things that he's not comfortable with, and it shows. We're in the preseason. Everything was vanilla. Everybody's playing man, and he had a great preseason. He looked like, Joe Montana reincarnated, So I think that's
everybody.
That's part of it.
Everybody jumped the gun on that one. They all thought, this great preseason. Oh man, we're going to cruise this season.
I did too. I went to training camp and I saw it firsthand. I'm like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. What happened here? Yeah. But I think they're going to be a lot like last year. They're going to have their bye week. Comes at a good time. They're going to get people healthy. Deontay Johnson coming back in the offense is going to be a great thing.
Huge.
They played. Think about when they played Baltimore. They had 3 starters on the offensive line not playing in that game. And they won the game against a premier team. It wasn't pretty by any means,
No.
But I think the offense is going to come along like they did last year. Kenny's going to get more comfortable. They're going to figure out there's a couple new components to that offensive line. And now Broderick Jones might be a staple at that left tackle. He might have cemented himself because he had a really good game against Baltimore.
Yeah.
And they're going to start to gel a little bit and complement the defense because defense can't hang on like that, being out there for 60 plays a game and performing the way they have. But they've been phenomenal. That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, T.J. Watt is he's in another world. I mean, this guy, he's got to be the Defensive Player of the Year if he finishes the year. I mean, he's just playing out of his mind. It's unreal. But, Chris is talking on Locked on Steelers, talking a lot about the rookie, so Broderick Jones, and how they were talking today about how strong this kid is. They said if he starts learning the game better, his strength is incredible. So I like that pick when they made that one. So on Twitter, I sent out a few messages today because there's now there's old buzz about the secondary, and there's a lot of fans out there crying for a new secondary person. I said, I think all you need to do is start, and I got some of this from Chris on that show, on that podcast, but I think Joey Porter Jr.'s got to start. And then they were talking about how what's his name now? 39. My mind just went
Minka.
Minka. I can't believe I couldn't think of his name. But they're saying let Minka play center field and get Joey Porter in their corner, and that will improve the secondary. I don't think they need to find anybody else. What about you? What do you think?
Well, I don't know and I don't think they're going to put Porter starting right away. I don't think when they come back from the bye week, Porter's going to be a starter, but I think he's going to be involved more earlier. I mean, he got a lot more snaps against Baltimore than he had any previous game. Before he was just relegated, just playing dime and long coverage, obvious passing situations. I think they're going to try to immerse him more into that defense and give Patrick Peterson some snaps, take a rest, and give Levi Wallace a breather, here and there wherever they can, move guys around. They've got a lot of talent in that secondary. If you think, they've got 3 starting safeties. They've got probably at least 3 cornerbacks who could start if you count Porter into that mix. And they got a lot of talent, and you can mix people around. But I agree with Chris. Let's get Minka out of the box. They have they have the other 2 safeties are pretty good hitters. Let them come down and play the box more. Let Minka play center field. Let him ball hawk. Let him get the picks. And I think that'll help things. But Porter, at least bring him in like nickel and dime situations. You bring him in nickel, so he's got a tackle on some with some running plays and things like that. That's going to get him more engaged. You don't have to throw him into the fire and do it. Let him learn the game, and I think that's what they did with Broderick Jones. I think that's what they're doing. Well, with Cam Hayward getting hurt, was it Benton? They had to start him on a defense line, but he's shining, like a star. And but let him get. Remember, T.J. Watt didn't start his first year. He had James Harrison playing in front of him, and look how that worked out. So I think, and Highsmith didn't start. So you had Bud Dupree. So let them learn behind the veterans, ease their way into the game. College game's a lot different than a pro game, and they'll get there. By next year, he'll be a starter.
Oh, yeah, and Highsmith, man, he came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, he is racking up the sack totals. And I was like, wow, where'd this guy come from? Unreal.
Yeah, seven quarterback pressures against the Ravens. Sit there and think about that for a second. That's by one man. That's a game record.
Those 2 together, I'm telling you, that's a nightmare for some other teams. Their offenses, those 2 guys out there. I made a comment today on Twitter saying Apple doesn't fall far from the tree because apparently I was reading about how Joey Porter Jr. was talking trash after the interception. And they were saying it's just like his father. He's just getting in people's faces and talking trash.
But did you hear the whole story on that? I guess
probably not.
I guess Bill Cowher told him, when you play the Ravens, you got to talk a little trash to the Ravens.
Oh, no, that's funny.
He's telling the youngster this. We got an old
hilarious.
coach telling him,
Well, that was Cowher, man. Cowher had the fire in him. But, yeah, and so when they drafted Joey Porter Jr., I was like, yes, this is going to be awesome because Pittsburgh's going to love this kid solely based on his father being a Steeler once before. I think he's got a good future ahead of him in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, thankful to the Chicago Bears for making a poor trade and playing like crap last year to give them a good draft pick there.
There was an article today about Chase Claypool. He's off Chicago now. Now I found out he's in Miami. So he kind of talked himself off of that roster.
And isn't it interesting? Think about that. Miami forfeited their draft pick, so that made Chicago's pick that they traded to the Steelers be number 32, which normally would be in the first round.
Yeah.
And now Claypool's at Miami. It's kind of interesting dynamic that happened there.
He's probably a happier character now because Miami is like one of the hot teams. So we'll see. Their offense is just incredible. So it'll be interesting to see how much impact he has over there.
Yeah, for sure.
Before we move to anything else, any other thoughts on the Steelers?
Well, I'm hoping T.J. Watt had a big injury, and it was like the first quarter where he dislocated a finger, tore some ligaments.
Yeah, I saw that.
But he plans on playing, and he had a pretty good game after that. When you finish the game with that fourth quarter, you have a scoop and almost score, so the hands not bothering him too much handling the ball, and then you sack Lamar Jackson on the final play for the Ravens. So I think he's going to be all right, and hopefully he gets healthy here with the bye week.
Yeah, bye couldn't have come at a better time. I mean, like you said, getting Deontay back and letting these guys heal up. I don't know if Frysmith's going to be back in time for that. But once you got Deontay Johnson and Pickens and Frymouth on the field at the same time, that's going to be a beautiful thing. And
don't forget, Cam Hayward should be coming back soon after the bye too, so that would be a big boost.
Well, before the season started, I had the Steelers going 12-5. That might be a little optimistic now, but I think they're going to finish strong. I still think they have an excellent team. And if Kenny Pickett can find his way and the offense can start blocking and getting the running game going, we can surprise some teams, I think.
I think you're right. Just think about this number when you're watching the Steelers. If the offense can get to the point putting 25 points up on the board a game, they win the game. I believe that. I think that's their magic number is 25.
Yeah, and that's doable.
Mm-hmm.
But bottom line for me, though, is I don't think anybody's beating San Francisco. That team is unbelievable. I think they've scored 30 points in every single game so far.
Yeah, they're tough, but the NFL's a funny thing. Something happened. Christian McCaffrey twists his ankle or something. They might be a whole different team.
Well, that's true. That's true. And, what they did to Dallas last week, and I was just like, oh, my gosh, Jerry Jones must be going out of his mind.
But it looked familiar. It looked like week 1.
Yeah. Well, let's get to two other Pittsburgh sports since we're talking about that. What do you foresee for the Penguins this season? I know they made a lot of trades in the offseason, so I don't follow hockey as close as I do the other two sports, but I'm sure you must.
I don't follow as close as I do football, but I do keep an eye on it. I think it's interesting some of the personnel that they added this year. They got a lot of veterans, they got a lot of all-star caliber to the team, but they're a little bit long in the tooth. And game 1 against the Blackhawks, they're winning in the third period and sort of ran out of gas, and Chicago scored with their young lineup. So I'm hoping that's not going to be the scene for the whole season. The Graybeard's getting a little tired in the third period and letting teams get back in it. I'm hoping their veteran leadership and get some going here, and they put some teams away. And I think they should have a successful season. I'm thinking they should be in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I mean, they missed last year, so that was kind of a real surprise when season winding down. I'm like, oh, my God, they're going to miss the playoffs. I mean, we're not used to that. Penguins are perennial, so hopefully they can return to the postseason this year. And then we'll have the Steelers and the Penguins in the playoffs. Hopefully, that would be a beautiful thing. The Pirates won't be in any postseason. Oh my gosh! Do you think this? What does the future hold for Pirates? I mean,
I don't know. I don't know if you were following in the beginning of the year, but in April they had the best record in baseball at one point. Like at 11 games in the season, I'm like going, oh my God! They're coming out of nowhere because they weren't that good in the preseason, and. Then they went on a 15-game losing streak soon after that, and it all fell apart. I don't know.
I remember writing some articles just saying, you know, they're playing with us because this happens all the time. The Pirates will get off to these fast starts, and then they just fade. That's a shame because they have such a great history. And, I mean, I was upset when McCutchen was on the playoff teams years back, and they had such a great team when they made those playoffs 3 straight years, and they just let everybody go. And, I mean, that's just like the history of the Pirates. They get these great players, and they let them walk.
Well, but I think that's a fundamental issue with Major League Baseball. I mean, you look at all the other major sports. Yeah, baseball has a salary cap, and I'm going to put air quotes up there because it's really not. There's a slap on the wrist if you go over it. I mean, you can't do that in the NFL. You can't go over on the salary cap in the NFL. You can't go over in the NHL on the salary cap. The NBA, I don't believe you can go over salary cap. You're restricted to that's what money you have to spend. And when you have these big market teams, you know, New York and Boston and LA, they can do pretty much whatever they want, get any players they want to do, and pay them whatever they want. How are the Pirates and the Kansas City Royals and some of these smaller teams? I don't know how Cleveland's doing it year after year. I mean, they've got some brilliant people there, obviously, but it's tough for a small market team to compete year after year when you have these giants spending lots of money. And
that's how George Steinbrenner used to do it when he was running the Yankees. The guy had so much money of his own. He was buying his teams. He was always accused of buying his teams, and because he would throw his own money into it. So it's crazy, but hopefully the Pirates will find some talent and make it interesting one of these seasons because it's just hard to watch now. But the one thing I make a habit of is I always look at baseball box scores and look at the attendance figures. So I'm always checking to see who's at PNC Park when the Pirates are playing. And they did pretty good in attendance considering the team. But then you look across the American League and the Oakland A's, it became a habit of mine this season to go look at their attendance figures because it was pathetic on some games. I mean, I saw as little as 2,000 or 3,000 fans in their stadium sometimes.
Oh, my gosh.
It was really bad. As a matter of fact, they set a record years ago when this was in the 70s, I think. I think it was 875 fans for a game. Never heard anything like that.
But even 2,000-3,000, our Double-A affiliate in Erie draws more than that per home game.
Yeah, their attendance was bad. And I thought they were going to break the record for all-time losses this season. And I think they ended up losing 111 or something like 109. But, wow, really bad. Well, it's been a good conversation, Darin, and I'd like to thank you for joining Total Sports Recall. I look forward to working again with you either on your podcast or maybe on this one or any other projects we can work on together, specifically with our host platform, the Sports History Network. I want to give you the opportunity to give any closing comments you might have.
Well, we got a lot of things going on Sports History Network. I invite you to go around there. It's like a smorgasbord. You can go into, go on sportshistorynetwork.com, check out all the podcasts are there. They have the icons on the front page that Ernie has on there. You click on them, read a little bit about the hosts, a little bit about the background, and find almost anything you want on any sport in the world. It's really a great platform to go, and you'll find some great people, and you'll hook on to somebody that I think you'll enjoy and like to follow as one of your favorite podcasts each day.
Excellent. Well, for Total Sports Recall, this is your host, Harv Aronson, and next week there will be yet another episode for the show. Actually, this weekend I have a special interview coming up, so be sure to check my Twitter page to find out when that will be posted. This one will be posted very soon. Several sports people have been booked for interviews for the shows, and announcement for those can be found on my Twitter page using my handle at TSRHarv59. You may also reach me with any comments or suggestions by emailing me at totalsportsrecall@gmail.com. Be sure to visit my YouTube channel, Total Sports Recall, and my website, totalsportsrecall.com. For Darin Hayes, this is Harv Aronson, wishing everyone a great week ahead.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Hello, football friends. This is Darin Hayes of the Pigskin Dispatch podcast, and I'd like to invite you to the portal of positive football history, Pigskin Dispatch and pigskindispatch.com. We talk about everything that centers around the game of American football, expert discussions, the origins of the games, the great players, teams, and coaches, and more, and some great guests and insights from experts. We have new episodes 3 to 4 times a week, and you can find us on sportshistorynetwork.com, pigskindispatch.com, or your favorite podcast provider.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcasts. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcasts. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.